good afternoon or good morning to everyone. I'm so glad to have you all on the call today. I am going to go through and unmute you on my side to make it so you can unmute yourself if you are interested in speaking. So I'm going to take a quick second and run down the list here. While I'm doing that, if you would like, in the handout section of the GoToWebinar pod or panel, I have some handouts for you. If you're not, let's see, there's Todd, if you wouldn't mind muting yourself. I did unmute you on my end, and that way we won't have any background noise. There's no good way for me to unmute everybody all at once. I apologize, but I'm trying to make sure that everyone on my end is unmuted. So if you'd like to speak, you can jump in and talk. But anyway, as I mentioned, in the handout section, I have a copy of today's presentation that I'm using. I also have for you the draft of the workshop I'm going to talk about, which our subcommittee has been working really hard on, and really pleased with all the details and the planning that has gone into this. It's going to be a great workshop for the virtual meeting this year. And I would also wanted to make sure that you had the guidelines if you are someone who's reviewing a paper for us right now, that you have those guidelines. So you can definitely, get that paper review completed in a timely manner and get it in. So I think I've gotten most folks unmuted on my end. I'm just making a real quick pass again to make sure. And if for some reason, when you unmute yourself, it doesn't, you see that it still has you muted, just let me know, raise your hand, and I'll get you unmuted, because I want everybody to have the ability, even though we're in GoToWebinar, to be able to talk if they would like to. So the other thing I want to mention is that I know we have some colleagues that are in the Louisiana area that are not going to be able to join us, and I just wanted to ask everybody, please keep them in your prayers right now with the hurricane that's coming in down there in Louisiana. I know it's much stronger than what was anticipated, and we're starting to see some early reports on the media of the destruction that has occurred. So I am certainly hopeful that all of our colleagues in that area and everyone really is able to weather the storm and make it through. So we want to keep them definitely in our prayers moving forward. So, all right, well, it looks like we've got most everyone hopefully on here who had registered. And if I've missed a muting anybody, just like I said, raise your hand and let me know, and we'll get you unmuted so you can talk. So I'm Victoria Beal, if I didn't mention that already. Very honored to be the chair of the AJE 15 committee, but we've been asked to please try not to use the code as much and to please try to use the committee name. So we are the TRB Standing Committee on Workforce Development and Organizational Excellence. And we have a tremendous history with the two committees that have merged, but I know that these are strong committees and that we're going to make an even stronger joint committee as our name spells out and represents all of us. So I want to talk through the items that I had listed on our agenda. And the first thing I wanted to talk about is a membership and friends update. And again, feel free to stop me either by raising your hand or by just unmuting yourself and ask questions at any point in time. We were given direction in January for any committees that were being merged that everyone who was a member was going to remain a member, and even if it exceeded the threshold of the number of slots that a committee is normally allotted. So if you were a member, you're still a member. I am going to send out a survey, though, to all of the current members, because I just want to make sure everyone is able to communicate what their intent is moving forward. With everything that occurred this past January, there may be some folks here who have decided they want to go a different route, and I want to make sure that moving forward, if you're not interested in still being a member, that we know that pretty early on, so we don't continue to bother you with tons of emails and updates. And you can use your resources and the best way you see fit, and we can, if we do drop below the limit that has been established by TRB for committee membership, that we can make sure to fill any vacant spots we might have. And mentioning that, we are going to eventually be going through a committee rotation, and when we do that, we won't be able to fill any membership spots until we do get below that threshold. So this is a very popular committee, always has been. So those of you who are members, think long and hard about telling me you don't want to be a member any longer, because it might be hard to get back on moving forward. That survey for the members is also going to include information on which administrative task forces within the committee you'd like to be a member of. And this is something that our friends definitely want to pay attention to too, because with the merger of the committees within TRB, we were asked to look at everything we were calling subcommittees. And in the review process, it was determined that there were two subcommittees that we had that were going to look at being sunsetted. One really because it had ran its course and the things were, or the work that the committee had done, and had really been able to move into other areas. And I want to thank Skip, Paul, and Inez, Avilares, for the work that they've done on the Ahead of the Curve subcommittee, because they were able to shepherd that into a process now where the courses are actually going to be offered through the National Highway Institute, NHI, with Transportation Research Board being the owners of the materials that were developed. And we will on occasion be tasked with looking at possibly updating materials as they need to be refreshed, but there didn't, as far as moving forward with an actual dedicated subcommittee at this point in time, there really wasn't a need that was seen for that. So I anticipate, though, here in a few years, we will definitely be hearing about updates that'll be needed, and we'll be assisting and possibly forming a administrative task force as a minimum, or possibly even a subcommittee to work through shepherding any types of update requests that come out for that. But I know that they have also worked hard to look at setting up a pooled fund to address any travel issues that might arise for DOT participants or others outside of there. So again, my hat, kudos to both of them, and hats off to that group for taking what was a work in progress and seeing it through to completion. We want to thank them very much. We also have had a university issues subcommittee for a few years, and with the merger of the two committees, we felt that that really could be moved into more of an administrative task force within the committee. So we're looking at administrative task forces really being the areas or the groups that get the work done within the committee. Besides the area of university issues, we're going to continue on with the groups that you've been a part of, which previously might have been called subcommittees, but are now going to be called administrative task forces, which are webinars, papers and program, research, and then communication. And the nice thing about administrative task forces within the committee is you don't have to be a formal member in order to head up an administrative task force, like with Gina Bass, who had reached her tenure limit on the committee and rotated off, but has remained as a friend and is heading up the communications, as all of you have seen from the emails that she's been sending in. So I'm sorry, I just saw that there was a question. Oh, hi, Skip. I'm so glad that you're able to be on the line. I'd gotten an email from him earlier stating that his power was out because of the hurricane. So I'm glad that you were able to make it and that you're safe. All right, so that's the updates I have for you right now. Memberships and friends. We will continue, God bless you, whoever that was, to send out communications. And Gina's been doing a great job of that. She's had to split the emails up because we have over 700 folks that the email goes out to between our members and our friends with both of the previous committees. So, I want to thank Gina for the efforts that she's made in that area too. So moving on to our next topic to keep things going here, paper reviews. This year, the committees as a whole, all across TRB, had a decreased number of papers that were submitted. And there was a number of different reasons that this was attributed to, one being the fact that there wasn't an official call for papers. The second one being that, of course, the pandemic, which we've all been impacted by. But we did have 4 papers that were submitted, and everyone who was sent a request to review a paper has, for the most part, promptly accepted, and I appreciate that. There was enough prompt acceptances that I know that as long as they follow through with their commitments, we'll have plenty of reviews to meet the minimum for each paper. So these papers will be part of what we're looking at as far as recommending, if they pass muster, of course, the review process for a lectern session that I'll be discussing a little bit later in our meeting here. But I just wanted to, thank everyone who's accepted those and tell everyone who didn't get a paper review request not to worry, because I've got plans on how to get additional papers, submitted in coming years. So I'm sure that the number of papers you're going to be asked to review in the future will definitely be going up. The big topic of discussion for many people who have been involved with the committee and across TRB is, how is the annual meeting going to work? And I found this great graphic out on TRB's website, so I thought I'd just put it right here in the middle of the presentation for you. And of course, it's available in that download that I put out there for you in the handout section. But of course, the annual meeting, as we've all been told, is going to be virtual. And it looks like it's going to take up, time-wise, a good chunk of your January. However, we have to keep in mind it's not going to be as intense as running between sessions in the Marriott and the Convention Center and back and forth, because they're going to split this out, and hopefully it'll actually mean that you're able to attend more different meetings or sessions. So what they're looking at is the first 2 weeks of January. And I'm grateful they took January 4th off, because I'd like that first day of the new year to get settled back in. But we're going to have committee meetings the first 2 weeks. I do not know when our committee meeting is going to be yet, but as soon as I know, you'll know. I am not someone that sits on information. I send it out as soon as I get it. And then what they're looking at is that the following 2 weeks, following the inauguration on January 20th, will be when they have sessions and exhibits. So this is when they're going to have lectern sessions, workshops, and poster sessions, which I want to talk to you a little bit about as well. So what we currently have in the works for our committee is an excellent workshop about getting to organizational performance evolution, advancing organizational excellence. And I recommend that you download the handout that I put in the handout section, because it is actually the detailed draft of what the subcommittee has been working on for this workshop. And I'm very excited. We have a number of excellent themes running through that, great interaction that's being planned, even though it's in a virtual setting, even including, right down to breakout rooms, which we've, of course, made certain that our staff rep, Claire, is aware that we need that ability. And she's been very supportive and said that they have a lot of confidence in the vendor they've selected. So I'm fairly certain that the workshop outline, the way you have it there in the handout panel, is going to remain. So the next thing is we're planning 2 lectern sessions so far. One is on workforce development life cycle, meeting the needs of the transportation workforce. And that's where we're going to focus in the papers from the review process. And I'd also like to hear from those of you on the committee, if you have different research that's been going on within your community that you're aware of that might fit this topic, there's a good chance that not all 4 papers are going to get recommended for presentation. I've not had a year where all papers were recommended for presentation in the time that I've been chairing paper reviews. So I would definitely like to hear from you if you feel that there's someone out there who has a program or research that's been going on that would be a good fit for that lectern session, so we can make sure that we fill that agenda out. The second session we're planning on is working with Gary Van Such on let me get the title of it here, sorry. They're taking a look at the Transportation Lean Forum community of practice and how they're working to elevate that to the next level. And we're in discussion with Gary right now about a lectern session that would be part of the annual meeting, focused around the Transportation Lean Forum community of practice. And that's stemming out of our Organizational Excellence Subcommittee. So if there's any questions on that, I'm happy to entertain those and hopefully get you an answer. We're also going to have our committee meeting. And from the looks of it, I know in past years, we have traditionally had presentations at the committee meeting. I don't know that that's going to happen this year, just because of the lack of papers that were submitted. So you might have to plan for a little shorter meeting. I'm sure it'll break everybody's heart to not have a 4-hour online meeting, but just that's the way it's scoping out currently. So stay tuned. And then last but definitely not least is the poster session. And we have been told that this is actually going to be a virtual environment where those who are invited to do poster sessions, or in our committee's case, I'm going to put out a call for those who are interested in doing poster sessions. You'll be able to have an online presence where you can not only upload your poster, but you can also put a video in there, and then that'll actually be available throughout the entire time that the sessions and exhibits are available. But I've also been told that each section will have one assigned time when everybody who's in that poster session will be asked to be online. So you will, in addition to that online time and the ability to answer questions in real time, also be able to receive emails from people who have questions about your poster all through that week and a half time period. So I think it's a great way to reach an even larger audience. And I'm hopeful when we send that call out that we'll get lots of responses and be able to have a very robust poster session. So any questions so far?
Victoria, can you hear me? This is Tyler Reeves.
Yeah, Tyler, how are you?
I'm good. Thanks for putting this together, and it's nice to hear your voice. It sounds like a really good lineup. At some point during the call, maybe I could just share some of what I've been working on in the spirit of just infusing, value into what you're already laying out. I just finished doing a 3-part workforce development webinar series with the Transportation Center. They co-hosted it, and that yielded a lot of really interesting stuff. And then I'm working on a number of other projects that have identified some topics that I think would be of interest to the committee. One idea that we might be able to work in somewhere is it might be good just to have a high-level conversation about big trends or big blips on the radar that factor in COVID and pre and post priorities. And I'd be happy to contribute to that if that would be helpful.
I think that sounds like a great path to look at there, because I know that COVID has changed our lives, at least on the workforce development side, and how we're doing that now. So absolutely. And, the ENO Center always seems to have great topics that they provide. So I'm glad to hear you've been able to work with them. But yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, they promoted, they were promoting the book, Empowering the New Mobility Workforce. And then with COVID, really a lot of the eurekas of the book were just reinforced. But I know you have a tight timetable with topics, so I just wanted to jump in and just say, call on me when you need to.
Sure. Yeah, we've actually got like an open discussion at the very end. So if you don't mind hanging on for a few minutes, and then we can kind of open it up for conversation then, and I'm gonna put up my notes to be able to start taking down information. That would be great. Okay.
Great.
Thank you. Anybody else who has any comments or questions about the annual meeting and how it's supposed to play out? Okay. All right. So next topic is research needs statements. And we've got some great work. Oh, wait a minute, there's someone who has their hand raised. Make sure. Okay. I've got you unmuted. And I don't want to mispronounce her name. I'm sorry.
So how do I, this is Anurag. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Anurag.
Yeah. Hi, this is Anurag. I'm a professor of civil engineering at Cal Poly. And so, Victoria, just wanted to clarify. So there is still some time for us to submit potential topics for poster and lectern sessions. Is that what you said? Just wanted to
Yes.
confirm that.
Yeah,
So
for our committee there is. Absolutely.
what's the process for that? What should I send you if we want to include something?
Sure, I'm going to send out, after the meeting's completed today, I'm going to send out a recap email, and in that recap email, you'll actually get it from Gina, will be links to a real simple form that you can fill out to let us know that you want to either submit a potential topic for the lectern session, or you want to submit for the poster session, or maybe even both. So, and I would just recommend that you fill that out and get it in. I'm going to set a deadline that's going to be sometime around the third week of September, because we've been told with the community brands vendor with TRB that we have to have everything in the system and ready to go before October 1st, because there's going to be one data transfer and that's it. So, but you'll have some time. You'll have approximately, 4 weeks at this point in time, Anurag.
Okay, thank you. The
All right,
October
thanks.
deadline sounds kind of tricky because usually you don't hear back about the papers till mid-October or something, right? Isn't that the usual timeline? But
Actually, the paper reviews are scheduled to be completed by September 15th. And if I remember correctly, we're supposed to get everything figured out as far as what's going to be invited in before October. So I would say just hang tight, and I wouldn't stress too much over that part of it. I know that TRB is working these details out because this is a whole new world for all of us.
right, thank you.
Thanks. And Dr. Colucci, I have you unmuted.
Good afternoon, Victoria.
Good afternoon, Ben. ¿Cómo está?
Bien. Thank you for the invitation. As always, it's a pleasure to be part of the friend of the committee. I'm just wondering if you believe, or the members of the committee, that might be a potential poster to cover the lessons learned in workforce development for over 35 years of a particular LTAP center.
I think that sounds like an excellent poster, Ben.
Okay, well, I'm willing and able to do that. I will talk to you later on through the appropriate channels, but will be more technical in nature of everything that had happened. I will get in touch officially with you later on. Is that okay?
Excelente. Muchas gracias.
Cuídate, bye bye.
And Ben, I'll let you mute yourself. Okay, good. Thank you. All right, so we're going to move forward if no one else has any more raised hands for the research needs statement discussion. The committee has always been very active in putting together research needs statements, and Sarah Hernandez has done an excellent job on this throughout the years. And I just want to go over real quickly what we have, what we've accomplished, but also to discuss with you how we're going to approach it moving forward. So, the TRB does have a research needs statement database, and this is where the information is all submitted to. Sarah did provide me a summary of the research topics that had been compiled under the previous Education and Training Committee, and moving forward it'll be, of course, be under the Workforce Development and Organizational Excellence Committee. But a summary of key topics from year to year. These are ones that have risen to the top continually. The workforce, as far as their needs for handling, managing big data, training needs for autonomous connected vehicles, our communities of practice. That's a continuous theme that I really feel we need to make sure we get our arms wrapped around. And then the methods of incorporating and addressing hiring needs and skills for, getting that younger age group interested in and into the transportation field. So the historical view is on the next few slides, and I'm not going to go into this in a ton of detail because it's what we have accomplished, but we can use it definitely to build off of. And as you can see, we've got a history of getting information into the research needs statement database and actually getting research funded, which it is key. And it's been my experience that I've seen as we get these topics into the research needs database and we ask to have them funded, that they're usually pretty highly ranked. amongst those who are voting for them, because workforce development and organizational excellence touches everybody throughout the entire transportation community. So the statements from 2019 and 2020, I know Sarah has been in process with getting actual research needs statements written, and that's, if you would volunteer for that administrative task group, that's really what we're looking at, is having you work with Sarah on writing those statements. And we do, as a committee, do some brainstorming, and then we do ranking. We tend to do that when we have our entire committee meetings and TRB in January. So we'll figure out a way to do that again this year virtually, and make sure that that happens. But we want to make sure that we continue to move forward the areas that we feel that research needs to happen within our area. The next topic I want to talk about is webinars. And our committee has been really good at hosting webinars, even if they weren't accepted by TRB to be an official TRB webinar. We have a history of hosting webinars outside of the TRB structure, but I want to make sure that we do look at the topics that are most relevant and make certain that we get the proposals in. They do accept those on a year-round basis, even though a lot of times the proposals seem to peak up interest when we get the emails reminding us that deadlines are coming up. And there's 3 times a year that proposals, the deadline kind of cuts off, and then TRB looks at scheduling them, and they look at what's submitted from March 16th through July 15th, and those end up being the webinars that are scheduled from September 1st to December 31st. And then July 16th through November 15th are the ones that are the January through April time period. So that's what we'd be looking at right now. And then the next round goes from November 16th to March 15th, and they schedule those from May 1st to August 30th. So what I've got here on the screen is just a real quick screen clip out of the current TRB webinar section in your My TRB logon area. And if you're interested in any of these, you can go in there to look and see what's offered and what PDHs are available with those, or even AICP hours. But I think it's important with our webinars administrative task force that we look at submitting topic ideas throughout the year. But I would like to still also take a look at offering webinars outside of the TRB structure if our topics aren't submitted. So that way we can ensure that the topic is getting out to our community. So whomever would be interested, and there'll be a little box to let me know that on the survey we're going to send out. And heading up this administrative task force, I would love to talk to you in more detail. And it's a great group to be a part of. They do excellent work. Another area that I wanted to bring up, because I think we need to have a conversation around this, is there's a lot of committees who hold summer meetings, and usually they combine it with some kind of a conference. With our group, I've always seen that there's so many different participants coming in from different areas that there seem to be a lot of different summer conferences that happen. And what I thought would be interesting is looking at, from everyone who's involved with the committee, what type of conferences are out there that we could form partnerships with. And maybe even if it isn't all of us, at least those who are present, who are part of this committee, could, plan a meet and greet. And if they happen to have enough of, say, an administrative task force there, then you can work on some of your committee administrative task force work at that summer conference. So I wanted to put this information out there, and it'll be part of the survey too. Of course, this is really more of an organic movement, and I want to make certain that everybody understands that we're not saying that there's going to be any type of funding for attending those types of conferences coming out of our committee. Because the only time we get any type of funding for a conference would be if we were to hold one. And I really don't feel, with the number of other organizations that are holding conferences, that that's something that we need to take on. I think those of us who are involved with, LTAP or CUTSI or National Transportation Training Directors, we have our summer conferences that are already occurring. And it would probably be more of a burden on our budget and then our time to try to do another conference on top of that. So I just really want to look at leveraging what's already occurring and make sure that when we all have the opportunity to connect with each other, that we're able to do that. So I have a colleague that's being very insistent. I turned Teams off before I started this, so I'm not sure why it's still sending me messages. So anyway, well, that's where I'm looking at there with the summer conferences and the partnerships. It was just an idea I had. And then last but not least, I want to talk about other business. One thing that I want to let you know is coming very soon. I've got in process a new website for our committee, and I'm working on it every day, a little bit more to get information out there. I hope to have it completed very soon. The other thing I want to mention is with our partnership with the AASHTO Organizational Management Subcommittee with Charlie Purcell and Deanna Belden, we are actually co-hosting monthly meetings with them. And those meetings, while you're definitely invited to participate if you're interested, I really see those meetings as being more the folks who are heading up the administrative task force joining and then reporting out on what the task force are working on. So I wanted to make sure that as a committee, you know that they're happening and understand, what the scope of the meeting is. I don't feel that all 700 people who are interested in this committee need to be on that call, but if you are interested in joining occasionally, you're definitely welcome to. We'd love to have you. And for anyone who would be interested in taking on the lead for one of those administrative task force, that would be a meeting that we would definitely want to have you at. So that's what I had as far as an update today. And I just want to open it up for, discussion or information. I know, Tyler, you said that you wanted to talk a little bit more about ideas, so we can definitely do that now. And if anybody else wants to talk, either unmute yourself or raise your hand. Oh, wait a minute, we got, let's see, person whose hands, I've unmuted you. Is it Jalil?
Hi everyone, this is Jalil Kianfar, Sandwich University. Victoria, I am wondering if there's an opportunity to have maybe an hour, a panel conversation of faculty sharing what worked for them and what didn't work teaching during this fall semester. So somehow sharing our best practices of teaching in this COVID hybrid flex remote in-person learning area.
I think that's an excellent idea. And honestly, I hadn't, even thought about that aspect of it, but you're right. You've definitely had to change what you're doing. In the past, our committee has always been very successful in getting lectern sessions awarded to us. And I'll share with you that within our section, each committee's permitted 2.3 lectern sessions, which obviously the 0.3 rotates around. But it seems to me that if we have something in the TRB system and ready to go, that we're more likely to get that put onto the agenda than other committees who might, for whatever reason, be having a struggle. So yes, let's have a conversation. And if you're willing to lead the charge on putting that lectern session together, we can get the details and I'll put it in the system and we'll see if we get a time assigned.
I will be happy to help. Absolutely.
Awesome. Thank you. Oh, we had some comments that Sarah Hernandez is willing to help with that as well, Jalil. Okay, so I thought I heard somebody else's voice.
Hey, Victoria.
Yes.
This is Tyler. Just a couple ideas and a couple updates also. I'm a member of the Native American Transportation Issues Committee as well, and we're pursuing a pretty ambitious, research lineup that includes deploying hopefully a comprehensive needs skills gap assessment for tribal transportation professionals. There's, of course, the reevaluations of what's happened with the TTAPs, Rep HWA. That's going to change. So there's a lot there. Ron Hall, the chair of that committee, is going to put me on a rural coordinating council. And TRB, I don't know much about it, but he told me he would send me information. So that's something that maybe would enable. One area where I think that gets overlooked is just rural transportation. But my feeling is that the workforce development solution should be integrated across the country. So, in that spirit, one of the things I'm focusing a lot on right now is trying to develop real world test beds for ITS innovations and things of that nature. So it occurred to me that a rubric that might be broad enough yet integrated enough for us would be something like smart communities and corridors, and how do you train and educate for that? And the reason why I say smart communities instead of smart cities is I feel like it has built into its title a bias toward making our cities smart, but not our suburban, exurban, and rural communities. So why not just say smart communities and corridors? That's one idea. I've got a study I'm working on with 3 other researchers here in Long Beach, where we're going to look at 3 intersections that form a corridor going in and out of the ports of Long Beach and LA. And we're going to get micro sensors and video cameras to study and then micro simulate what happens at those intersections. And then parallel to that, we're developing a series of privacy policies that reflect buy-in from the community. Some of the smart city test beds that have taken place elsewhere, were such as has been widely documented in Toronto, show that there's a lot of backlash if you don't transportation with community buy-in. So it seems like there's a lot of area. So I wanted to put that out there. And then, as I mentioned before, doing the trio of transportation resilience webinars with that also proved to be very rich, looking specifically at transit with all its challenges, looking at supply chains, and then just across all 6 subsectors that form our transportation workforce. So as I said before, happy to contribute in any way that is useful, and just wanted to share those ideas.
Thank you for sharing them. As you were talking, Tyler, I'm thinking that, we potentially need to look at maybe a hybrid along the continuum that is in between, the actual research needs statements themselves and the implementation part, to kind of bridge the gap on the other steps that need to occur. So maybe, we can have a conversation offline about that and see how we can get, a lot of the different areas that you've mentioned addressed through the work of the committee. So
yeah, I think it's a great idea. I think career pathways are just an absolutely brilliant workforce metaphor that helps make sense of the entire pathway, beginning in elementary school all the way through post-secondary, and in ongoing training that happens for incumbent professionals.
Great. And then Nicole, I've unmuted you. I saw you had your hand raised. If you're talking,
yes, can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you now.
Yes, can you hear? Okay, good. Yeah, so my comment actually is very similar to what the last speaker said, but I put it in the question box as well. I'm interested in supporting more of the research needs statement development. I've done a decent amount in that regard, and I do truly enjoy more of the scoping of research needs. So in general, I'm interested in supporting that, but more specifically, I'm working on a study right now on transportation planning and tribal communities through federal highway. And one of the themes that's already starting to emerge very early on is the gap between planning education for tribal transportation planners. They either have a degree in a related field or don't have a degree in planning whatsoever. And so there's been a gap and a greater need for planning education and transportation education and pathways to that for tribal planners as well. So I think there's certainly a growing interest in how to improve pathways for transportation professionals in tribal communities, and learning more about what the gaps, the barriers, and opportunities are that I think could lead to a pretty interesting research needs statement. And I think that fits well with the prior speakers committees on tribal issues as well. So there could be some partnership opportunities there that I'd be happy to support or lead as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. We'll touch base with Tyler and we'll get Ron Hall into the conversation. And just for everyone who's on the meeting today, so you're aware, there was a item that came out in the Federal Register last Thursday, I believe it was, asking for comments on the tribal transportation, the TTAP program. So if you are interested in that, I definitely would recommend that you take a look at last Thursday's Federal Register and, see what has been published and when the comments are due back, because there was a pretty robust discussion in that document about what has occurred with the downsizing from the 7 regional tribal centers to 1, and then the potential for how they're looking at changing that model again moving forward, which is going to be a huge impact to the tribes. So please take a look at that if you're interested. But thank you, Cole. All right, anyone else I see another hand up. I'm going to unmute you, Joe. So you're unmuted on my end. You just have to unmute on yours.
Okay. Victoria, how are you this afternoon?
Good, how are you, Joe?
Good. I'm sorry I've been very late to this meeting. I was coming up with another one. To build a little bit on the discussion that Tyler talked about career pathways, APTA is now working on a pretty extensive project on workforce readiness, in particular identifying those students, high school students, who are coming from less than optimum backgrounds and those who are perhaps coming from underserved populations. We're identifying sort of nationally what kinds of outreach programs transit agencies and other organizations, academics and private sector have put into place so that those students who are in their junior, senior year can benefit from these programs, albeit virtual in light of COVID, or some hybrid version or in person. Sort of all depends, as a springboard for them into a career in public transportation. We envision sort of this work being completed around the end of November, but we have been quite excited by the models that we're finding out, the great examples, and the conversations that this has generated. So I'm sorry that I missed the first part. I was at another online meeting, but just kind of want to add that to the mix if there might be some opportunities to leverage some of the information that we see coming to the surface right now.
Joe, that sounds like a fantastic project you're working on. And, I could see definitely that we would want to, as you get that research completed and look at submitting that as not only as a webinar idea, but if it's not accepted as a TRB, webinar in their series that they do, to look at doing it as a webinar through the community, because I think that, even though you're focused on transit, this concept's still the same.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely. Okay. Well, we'll talk more offline, but I just kind of wanted to kind of bring that to the forefront.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Is there anyone else who'd like to talk? Has questions, would like to share something? Nope. Okay, well, I'm all about saving time if we're at the end. So please watch for that follow-up survey. I'm so glad to have had you all on here. This is the path we're moving forward on, and it's so great to continue working with everyone in this area, because we're truly going to make a difference for the transportation workforce and the processes that our folks engage in to make certain that they're managing them well and are able to complete the work set before them. So, all right, everyone stay safe, take care.
Thanks, Victoria.
Thank you.
Thank you.